From the earliest moments of human history, movement, vision, and the tactile interaction with the world around us were essential for survival. As technology has evolved, our lifestyles have become increasingly sedentary, contributing to a rise in both mental and physical health issues. Interestingly, I discovered a personal sanctuary in playing a guitar, a craft that demands the active use of my hands. This discovery led me into a profession that also engages my manual skills. And recently I learned that my surname Kowal translates to blacksmith in English, suggesting that working with my hands might just be part of my heritage. So these revelations prompt a question. Why does engaging my hands in work bring me such peace? Could there be an underlying benefit to this activity? In this episode, I'll explore these questions with Kelly Lambert, a renowned behavioral neuroscientist from the University of Richmond. We'll delve into the advantages of crafting and hands-on activities. The insights we'll share might just surprise you. Before we talk to my guest, Dr. Kelly Lambert, let's check in with Michelle from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop, who's going to give us a little bit of input and insight into what's going on in the paper world. Hey, Michelle.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm excited to be here to talk about my favorite subject.
Paper?
Paper.
Now, for those of you that don't know Michelle, I've actually been working with her for quite some time. They're the ones that have helped us put together paper packs for Dreaming Tree so that you guys are able to buy all the supplies that you need with essentially one click. And we're possibly, nothing's in stone yet, but possibly looking into maybe offering some bundles where you also have the little scraps that you need, because oftentimes you don't need a full sheet of paper. So don't get too excited yet. We haven't ironed it out, but it is a possibility. But anyway, Michelle, what do you got for us today?
Okay, well, I thought for today that I would cover 5 trends that I'm seeing in the paper crafting world.
Okay.
So I've got 5 of them. The first one is shadow boxes. And I know shadow boxes were popular like 2 or 3 years ago, but they're making a resurgence. So if you don't know what a shadow box is, it's a kind of like a little scene created out of paper, and it will have multiple layers of paper with space between. So it kind of gives the element of it being dimensional. Mm-hmm. I think people love them because it's like peeking in on a little scene. I know Dreaming Tree has a couple different shadow boxes available.
Yeah, I actually I'm pulling one up on the screen for them to see. It is the bicycle paper sculpture. I think it's from last spring. But yeah. I mean, they're really, there's a lot of them now. There weren't so many a few years back, but I feel like, especially with a certain company that I won't mention until they, give me sponsorship money. There's a ton of them. And how do you feel about them? There being so many though.
Well, I love them, so I'm fine with it. One thing I'm seeing now is they're starting to put them on cards. So originally it was just like kind of home decor, but now they're scaling them down for cards, and I'm a card maker, so I'm excited about it. I love it. I'm seeing them in like even little like scrapbook embellishment stickers where they're making little mini versions. So it seems like they're really having a resurgence.
So are you saying that they're actually taking the shadow box and shrinking it down, or just using the elements from the shadow boxes on top of cards?
Using the elements.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Actually, I've seen both where it's like it'll have a fake frame around it. But yeah, Mostly it's just creating little scenes out of paper, using foam dots in between to kind of give that effect of looking into the distance. So
I've felt that they're becoming oversaturated, but I guess maybe. But if you're telling me that they're starting to pick up more, maybe we need to make a few more.
It feels like it went away and then came back. I love them with all solid paper, like all white, or I've seen them with all glitter, like our champagne glitter Lux. It's a really kind of pale tan sand color. I think that would be beautiful just as a monochromatic shadow box.
I agree, and I think the crafters appreciate that too, because there's less paper to have to pick out and coordinate.
Yeah. Right.
So it's what's the word I'm looking for? Instant gratification with less work, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What else you got?
Okay, next thing is stitching. So Paige Evans was the original, I guess, the creator of this idea, as far as I know. But it's actually stitching, taking embroidery floss and stitching on paper. So I know you have an example to show us.
I do. Yeah, I have it. This is a Pinterest link that you sent me, actually.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is a card that she created. It's a memory decks card, but you can see how like just stitching around the elements. So she started this a couple years ago, and now it's just going crazy. Spellbinders, paper tray, and We Are Memory Keepers all have stitch clubs and dies, metal dies that are actually made with the little stitching holes so you can punch out.
I was going to ask you, so this is not something that you run through a sewing machine. This is actually just dies and then you manually do it, kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
what? It's almost like a cross stitch sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I think I want to explore like making. I know you can just make dots with your Cricut. I think it would be really fun to make cutting files.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember in like probably kindergarten or something, they'd give you little templates, and
Yes.
I remember making, if you follow, if you thread the yarn through the holes properly, you could create designs. So there's an idea.
Yeah. Like remember the little shoe? We had a shoe, and it would like you'd wind it across, and it would look like a shoelace. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see what kind of feedback we get. Maybe we
Yeah.
need to, maybe we just start with a little freebie or something, and I don't know. That'd be great for kids too, I think.
Yeah. It'd
But
be
but
interesting.
definitely on the thicker cardstock, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's one
Okay.
of the important things. It doesn't really work on like the thin pattern paper because as soon as you try to pull it taut, it will just rip. So you want to choose a heavyweight cardstock.
Mm-hmm.
Got a couple recommendations for you. So Basil Card Shop, that's 100 pound. That comes in
Okay.
tons of colors.
Let me pull that up on the screen here. I think you sent me a link to that. There it is. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, so you have a specific line of
Yeah.
100 pounds. Okay, this is smooth and not textured.
Right.
Do they have a textured version, or is it all?
We don't have a
Okay,
heavyweight.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
So Basil Card Shop, and then My Colors Heavyweight is the other one, and those two are very similar papers. They're both 100 pounds, so they're nice and sturdy. But that just both of those lines gives you a lot of color options.
Cool. No, they look
Yeah.
great. So this is My Colors. That's kind of almost like your in-house brand, but not, right? It's that one
No,
that you talked about
it's
before.
a separate brand. Yeah, it's not an in-house brand.
Oh, okay. It's the one that you guys acquired or brought in before Encore, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it cuts really. I mean, we always recommend that one. Encore, I think, cuts the best. I've tested it exclusively, but My Colors, it cuts next to best. So
Okay. Are you're a Cricut user then, or what do you use?
I have a Cricut and a Silhouette, but I
Okay.
primarily use my Cricut.
Okay. Which do you find actually cuts better in your opinion?
Well, I have an older Cameo and a Maker 2, I think. So my Maker cuts better just because it's a newer machine, I think.
I think they went to the Maker 3 after the 1, right?
Yeah.
They
Mhm.
skipped 2 for some reason.
Oh, well, then I have the 1. Okay. I
Okay.
have whatever's the last one before the 3.
Okay. Yeah, because Silhouette just sent me the Cameo 5 with that electrostatic mat, and I actually was very impressed with how much more accurate it was. I don't want to say I'm not here to start drama or anything, but yeah, I really I think so. Unless the Maker that I have on my desk here is not more than 6 months old, so it can't be because it's degrading. I know over time the belt is maybe not as tight and this and that happens, but yeah, I mean that's my personal findings thus far. So anyway,
So what
I'll
do
keep.
you, sorry, I just want to know what you think about the electrostatic mat. Does it work good?
I did a little live stream on it. Did you see that one or no?
No, I didn't. I missed
Yes.
that.
So yeah, I did like a live demo on it. There's a tiny bit of a learning curve to it. And in some situations, depending on how careless you are, it can replace your morning coffee. Because if you don't turn it off when you're removing your paper, you're going to get a zap. So
Wow.
I've gotten zapped a handful of times. It does wake you up a little bit. So there's a learning curve. The issue that I ran into was when one of the people that were watching the live stream asked how it handled scraps. So of course the next day I'm in the studio cutting out scraps. I did like a 4x4 piece, a 2x4, and then an even smaller one. It handled the 4-inch by 4-inch piece well, but once it started cutting on the smaller pieces, it just didn't have enough grip to hold it down. And then, so the paper kind of, moved out of the way, and then the blade started cutting into the protective mat.
Oh, no.
So that, and again, I talked to Silhouette about that, and I think it'd be helpful to maybe just mention that, because you don't want to, obviously you don't want to destroy your
right.
your protective mat. But for larger pieces of scrap and for full 12 by 12 sheets, especially sheets that have, a solid, smooth back, the texture supposedly, I haven't really tested it because I don't really cut my paper upside down with the texture down. So I don't want to test it because I'm afraid I'm going to, repeat the same thing I did. But yeah, it worked great. And actually during the live stream, I cut out, I think it was some little windows for a tiny little house. I picked it up and I flicked it, and all the little pieces just came out. You know how sometimes you have to grab like a little poker to get it all out. It just flicked it and it all popped out. So it was quite impressive. And I think that, a lot of people saw that and were like, wow, okay, the work was pretty good. So we'll see. I'm still waiting on a replacement mat because I don't want to destroy the actual electronics in there. I'm also wondering if you mess up the protective plastic sheet and then your blade hits and starts cutting into the actual mechanism that creates the static, are we talking nuclear explosion?
Is it going to burn your house down?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they've thought that through. I'm just being silly right now, but I just want to protect the electrostatic mat before I do any more harm to it. But yeah, no, I think it's great so far. So
I'm gonna have to watch live.
Yeah, I'm still working on an official review video for Silhouette. So yeah. Anyway, you have some other.
Okay. Yep. Moving on.
Grandma Core.
Granny Core.
Granny Core. Okay. Tell me about Granny Core.
Okay. So this is a Pinterest trend, and it kind of, right now it's in the fashion world. So all the young girls are wearing grandma clothes, like embroidered sweaters and hand knitted sweaters, and trying to think of some more examples, like the crocheted Afghans. There's like purses made out of those and vests made out of those. It's a whole thing in the fashion world.
It's like a bohemian type thing. Like boho. Okay. Well, okay. Well, that's fine. When I think of that style, I think more bohemian. But I guess there's
it's a little,
probably Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
It's funny, I know, yeah. Anyways, we're starting to see it kind of move into the paper world. So doilies are becoming really popular again. Lace designs. Some of the new paper lines, I'm seeing vintage florals. So the example I have is Simple Vintage Spring Garden from Simple Stories.
I have it on the screen here. Yep.
And they have a paper, you can see this paper on the screen, has all kinds of like vintage tablecloth designs, and it's actually quilted together with like fake stitching.
That's really cool.
So the quilt motifs, the lace, the doilies, the embroidery, all that stuff is Granny Core. And I'm starting to see it in paper lines.
Yeah, I feel like for a long time there, I guess a little bit of that style reminds me of Graphic 45 a little bit. I never really thought that Graphic 45 became irrelevant. I know there was a point in time where they were just like, everyone was just, especially back when Archivers was a thing and you could actually go there and get the stack. I still love their paper. I got a ton of it, but I'm glad to see it because it's not boring. There's a lot going on. It kind of fills things in and makes things more interesting. So I'm glad to see it. I'm sorry, what was that?
I think that's kind of my style. So I really love it. I guess I'm Granny Core at heart, but
there you go. I like it. And then you had you actually, I think you even posted this on your Facebook, on the 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop Facebook. You guys were talking about the color of the year, which is what is it?
It's peach.
It's peach. Okay.
Yeah. So Pantone's color of the year is peach, and it's a real pale peach. one of the other trends is non-traditional colors. So if you remember last Halloween, we were seeing pink and lavender and teal pumpkins for Halloween.
Yeah.
And all the paper lines. And
Mm-hmm.
then Christmas, we were seeing mint green and that bright cherry red, kind of a vintage spin on that,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty non-traditional for Christmas. So when I look at the new paper lines that came out, specifically American Crafts, all of their spring lines are really bright colors, which I thought is interesting. Usually spring is more pastel.
Pastel, muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is confusing to me because the color of the year is peach, which I would think everything's pale. But Pantone didn't announce this until late 2023, and I think the paper lines just haven't caught up yet. So I think we're going to see peach in the next couple releases. I think they're just kind of catching up to Pantone's determination of the color of the year. So I think we'll see some pale peaches later in the year in paper lines.
Gotcha. Well, so you stay on top of this a lot more than I do because obviously you work for a company that almost
We buy
exclusive.
paper.
Yeah, you buy and sell paper, right? So, is there how does it compare today as far as the number of releases compared to, let's say, I don't know, 5 years ago? I guess you could say. Are you seeing the same amount of stuff coming out? Is there significantly less? Like, where are we?
There's less. I wouldn't say it's significantly less, but American Crafts, I think they had their January release, which, normally we had that CHA where it was like the big hullabaloo
Right.
whole year, and that's a much smaller production now. And so I think people kind of produced heavily for that, and now that that's not a thing anymore, they're just slowly, I think rather than like huge releases, we're seeing
Mm-hmm.
slowly dripping. And the lines seem to be fleshed out, whereas before it was all about pattern paper because scrapbooking was, what people were doing.
Right.
Now we're starting to see more embellishments and dyes and stuff like that. So
That's odd to me that they're focusing on dyes when you can get yourself a machine and an electronic dye, which doesn't take up space and you can actually resize. But
yes,
that's, yeah, I don't know. It's odd to me, but hey, you know what? I'm not gonna say I understand everything. But my theory on why there's less paper being put out is, well, the obvious is that people are not buying it as much, and I think the real reason is they've bought so much and their
Yeah.
stashes are so big that they're probably good for the next 20 years.
yeah. And it feels like I haven't seen anything like fresh and new for a while. It's just the
What is,
same. I mean, to me, I don't get excited about paper lines very much
but what does
anymore.
that mean though? Because
I don't know.
as the owner of Dreaming Tree, I get feedback from my customers all the time, and there's a lot of positive, and then there's occasionally I get this comment where it's just, well, it seems like things are just, I know, and they come out and say, I realize how difficult it can be to continually create new, fresh ideas.
Right.
I'm a big proponent of everything is a remix, where essentially there's really nothing original unless you're God. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in some sense, there's always going to be things that repeat. How do we get over that?
That's a really good question. I think my husband was just saying that the other night about Netflix, how everything is the same. And maybe we've just reached the end of creativity.
or
It's
maybe
over.
maybe it's just a plateau. Maybe we need a renaissance of some sort.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. I don't want
I
anything.
know
I don't want
that's
to.
a
I don't
much
want to think
deeper
anything negative. Yeah. Okay. And you have one more thing that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the last trend I'm seeing is the detailed layered paper piecing. So way back in the day when we started paper piecing, creating little characters and designs out of paper, you used to have to like print them out, trace them on your cardstock. It was quite a process.
You're talking like little characters and such?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of how it started. It went away. That wasn't popular. I've seen people say that they would rather die than like glue lots of little pieces together. Now, obviously, you and I are not those people. We love to do.
No.
Yeah,
No.
I love it. So Anyways, it went away for a while, and we had those one cut files where it was like you'd cut once and you'd kind of get a shadowy cutout. That is going away again, and now we're starting to see people doing the detailed piecings again. So Spellbinders has, their dies are getting more and more complicated. So they have like bouquets where all of the individual little flowers are separate pieces that you would cut out. Tim Holtz also released a line of dies called Colorize, and he specifically says they're made for people who love to piece things together, and it's multiple layers with little tiny pieces. So I think we're starting to see a resurgence of that for people who love to do that. It doesn't mean everyone has to do it, but I love it. I think it's relaxing, and I think a lot of people feel the same.
I hope that people start to do that. And I don't know how the trend became or it is what it is. And hopefully it picks up some steam, because I feel like the last few years, and maybe it's because we're getting bored with TikTok and Facebook Reels, and you know, instead of doing this with your thumb all day, you can actually maybe, you know, do something productive and rewarding, which is actually what we're going to be talking about with my next guest, Kelly Lambert, effort-based rewards. So it's going to be interesting, and yeah, I hope you're right, because I know with Dreaming Tree, not all the time, but oftentimes, there has to be a lot of pieces, otherwise it lacks detail and it looks kind of childish and juvenile.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes you can pull it off, especially if you have your machine cut out intricate stuff. And like we did with our stained glass card recently, a lot of details in one little piece. So you don't have to sit there and paper piece things, and it looks nice, but there's oftentimes you're not going to achieve that by just having the machine do all the work. So I hope you're right. I hope it catches on. So anyway,
so if that's your jam, I was just gonna say one more thing. If that's your jam, paper piecing, check out Encore textured cardstock, which is the in-house line from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. This cardstock's actually made for small, intricate die cutting on metal dies or with Cricut and Silhouette machines. So I think you'll be pretty happy. I know you guys use it.
We've been. When did you launch it?
September of last year.
Yeah, so we've been using it pretty much exclusively since then. I still have, I don't know if you can see behind me, but they know that my paper's back there, and it's starting to now transition into Encore. There's still some AC back there because I need to use it up, you know, but after that, we'll be pretty Encore exclusive. We've been very happy with it. So anyway, thank you for coming on today, and you're going to be on again, whether you like it or not, if I have to drag you on here.
I'll talk about paper all the time. No problem.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
My guest today, Dr. Kelly Lambert, a first-generation college student who received her undergraduate degree from Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. In 1984, she majored in psychology and biology, and she received her Master of Science and PhD in the field of biopsychology from the University of Georgia in 1988. Kelly, welcome to the show.
So great to be here speaking with you, Leo.
Well, so the overlap, and the reason I wanted to talk to you, I actually wrote an article years ago about how the guitar, for me, this was before I got into this line of work. In my teens, I went through a lot of anxiety and panic. I don't know if it was covert childhood stuff. I'm not sure, but anxiety hit me really bad. I was going to school full time, working a stressful job, and panic just took over me. My saving grace was getting laid off. I got a severance plan from a company I won't name, and I bought a guitar. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm gonna relax a little bit, and I played guitar every day for about a month because at the time, young guy, girls like guitars. I need to be able to be the guy that plays the guitar. But you know what? In that quest, my panic disappeared completely. So I kind of saw an overlap with that and crafting, because your hands are engaged, your mind is focused on one thing, and you're not letting those thoughts creep into your head. Because, like you said, words and what you think can really affect your body. So what happened? Like, why did
Yeah,
that work for
I
me?
think that's great that you navigated toward that. So yes, on so many levels. It could be learning to play an instrument. You're going to have that neuroplasticity, which is great. And a lot of the antidepressants are techniques or approaches that help with depression increase neuroplasticity, from exercise to electroconvulsive shock therapy to antidepressants. But you bring up something that I didn't mention with the effort-based reward animal work that I think is so important from a functional mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
and that is gaining a sense of control. I think that the animals, they go out, they know, up on the mound, I dig, I've got this, and that gives you a sense of control. If you have had anxiety, so many young adults and teenagers do, you don't feel like you have control in the world, and that lack of control, I can't control whether or not she's going to like me, or I'm going to do well in this job, or I'm going to make a good grade or have a career. We kind of catastrophize sometimes, but in little ways. But I can sit down and I can teach myself the guitar, or I can cook dinner and there's actually something good that we enjoy. I've used the example about crafting such as knitting. And I don't knit, I should, but it's hard for me to sit still very long. But you can see beautifully through this behavior-ceutical kind of example I have, that as you're planning and thinking about what you're going to knit or what you're going to learn to play, that also enhances that dopamine neurochemical that we were talking about. In fact, rats, they like cocaine like humans do, and they can press a little bar to get it delivered right to their brain.
Wow.
But if you're measuring the dopamine, it's as they approach that bar where it really starts to go up. So the anticipation is key. So we all need to be dreaming, if you have a good name, and planning. So you're planning what you're going to knit or learn to play or cook. And then if you're using our hands, so humans also do research with raccoons, and they use their paws too. I don't know if we can get them to craft, but they are very crafty and smart. But we have a motor cortex that control outside a strip on the outside of our brain that controls all of the movement of our bodies, the voluntary control that we have. And the hand is a big part of it. Our face and our hand takes that more. So our hand, just the control, our thumb, we have more space than like our whole back. So because we have more flexibility. So if we're using our hands, we're engaging a huge part of that motor cortex. And also both hands. So my left hemisphere controls my right hand, and vice versa. So we have this lateralization. So if you're using both hands, you're engaging both hemispheres. And any movement I talk about as I think about behavior-ceuticals and what kind of got me on that path and thinking about protection and resilience against depression is that so much of our brain has evolved to move us around. And some scientists will go as far to say the brain is only here to move us around. With this book and the contingencies, I'm also adding it's allowing us to gain information to make choices, informed choices. But we have this area on the back of our brain called the cerebellum, and it is involved in motor coordination. So when you're playing and doing crafting, that's engaged. 78% of all of the neurons in our brain are in that structure on the back of our brain that's involved in movement. And we also have a huge middle part of our brain called the striatum. And if you have Parkinson's disease or Huntington's disease, that area of the brain is affected. It's involved in habits and movements and flowing and smoothly allowing us to smoothly engage and enter and sequence our movements. So you've got that cerebellum, you've got that huge middle part, we've got this strip. A lot of the brain's real estate is devoted to movement. So anything where we are moving and being a little bit more active than the scrolling thing, we are actually activating more brain power, more brain real estate. So as you're learning to play, you're using the hands, you're learning something new, that's neuroplasticity. If it's working well for you, you're planning and you're anticipating, you've got some positive emotions that are so important. And also, as you're thinking about what notes to play or what to put in your recipe or what stitches that when you're knitting, those thoughts are distracting you from this group of friends, they don't like me, or this paper was just rejected, or I don't know, this is going to work out in class. So you kind of put away those, nagging thoughts, and you're focusing on these thoughts that you're enjoying in the moment, gaining a sense of control. And also 2 other neurochemicals I'll throw into the behaviorseuticals. Mm-hmm. One is serotonin, and that's the product of or the target of antidepressants. They said that it increases our serotonin, but repetitive movement also increases serotonin. And a lot of hobbies, you have some repetitive movement. And then finally, if you're doing anything in a group with other people, I don't know if it's okay to say, but it's Valentine's Day as we are taping this. And oxytocin is considered kind of simply, maybe oversimply, as the love cuddle chemical, but oxytocin is part of, as we gain social trust, and it has social functions. Mm-hmm. And little rodents that mate for life, the prairie voles, they have more oxytocin than their rodent cousins who play the field. So oxytocin also reduces stress. So you're building social trust, reducing stress, enhancing serotonin, enhancing the feel-good neurochemicals. As you gain a sense of control, you're probably reducing stress hormones. Where can you buy that in a pill? Where? You can't. That's beautiful, I think.
Do you think crafting could be sort of labeled as sedentary because you're doing a lot of sitting? So obviously I move around a lot. It's mm-hmm. probably a good idea to stand up and not craft for 5-6 hours a day. You want to balance that out, right? So that goes without saying. And then you mentioned, we're social animals. We want to be around people. I do kind of feel like our industry, the crafting industry, I know we have customers and fans that get together with their kids, their grandkids or whatever. They enjoy crafting with them. So that's where the oxytocin comes in. But I do feel like a lot of them are a little bit, just isolated. Do you think crafting in a digital environment, whether it be through like a Zoom with a group of people, does that have the same effect, or is that halfway there? Do you know what I mean?
We're still, I think, trying to figure that out. And again, I'm not a human researcher, nor am I a clinician. I should say that. I'm just telling you what some of the research is suggesting. So, if there's no other way to communicate with someone, such as the case during the pandemic, mm-hmm. I think it did allow us to connect. But if that starts to take the place when we can have the full connections. So it's okay, perhaps, when there are no other options. But when I'm thinking about a brain that is an experienced sponge, I know that if you were actually in the room with me, it would be a little bit more physical and engaging as far as the visual experience. Right now, I can only see, this part, maybe hearing things in your voice, your gestures. All of that would be a richer experience than Zoom,
a screen,
or social media. But if I was in isolation, it would probably be great.
It's better than nothing, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So going back to building those pathways, there was a part, I don't know if she's your colleague, Anne Graybills. There was a part in your book you reference how ultimately there's behaviors that shift from actually requiring attention to being more reflexive. So let's say, like the guitar, it's a muscle memory. You get those pathways, they're nice and solid. You need to challenge yourself and, maybe learn a new lick or try a new method when working, or try a different project. But over time, is it kind of become an autopilot sort of thing with anything, or is there still the potential to, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting question, and Anne does work with habits, and it is adaptive for our brain. When you're learning, if it's the guitar, and you're so kind of all in and focused on that, or juggling, that's another example. I'm just following balls. once your brain kind of figures that out, then it can do that on kind of an autopilot, and you can carry on a conversation or think about something new. So it's adaptive, because we don't need to be all engaged with our tasks. And especially if we think about our ancestors, you needed to be able to still be vigilant and carry on with other things. So that's a good thing, but it is a reminder that that task of playing the guitar or juggling isn't going to be as engaging and challenging for the brain unless you add new tricks or new songs. And it still may give you great, maybe a great reward. It still may calm you. So there are so many, it's hard. I don't think we can find a task or an activity that's going to check all of the boxes for mental health, and mental fitness. And you mentioned exercise. Crafting is not exercise, and exercise is important. We need to be walking. We need to get up every 90 minutes or something, walk around. And that is important for getting oxygen and glucose to our brain, more so than being able to, cooking or just using our hands. So the effort-based reward, I think, is getting more into the mental fitness, protection against psychiatric illness and emotional resilience kind of category. Exercise is it's keeping the fuel and the systems humming, kind of the maintenance system for the brain. So the brain is so complex, and I appreciate your willingness to want to kind of dig a little deeper to understand it.
You've written many books, but one that we're going to focus on today is called Well Grounded, which I have right here. And in the book, you centered around what you called the contingency calculator, or contingency calculations, the ability to predict the outcomes of decisions and actions and how they are critical for survival and success. Can you tell us what that means?
What prompted me to start writing that book, being a student of the brain for over 3 decades now, I started to think a lot about why we have, especially primates, this elaborate brain. There are other animals that have vertebrates, but not mammals. They've got a nervous system. They seem to do pretty well. But humans, we have this, and primates, this embarrassment of riches, as I say in the book. We've got more of the neurons or the cells of the nervous system and that outer area, the cortex, than any other animal on the planet. Elephants, dolphins, they have bigger brains, but not this cortex. So it made me think, what is this cortex for? Why do we have so many neurons? Why not, we know that the brain helps keeps our muscle, our we're able to interact with the world around us through moving our muscles and responding to different stimuli out in the world. But why so much? And it just led me to go down the rabbit hole of appreciating how much experience leaves its imprint on our brain. And through experience, we're able to approach each new challenge with information. And we may not be consciously aware of, there's a 60% chance that I'll get this job, or this person will work out as a partner, versus 30% for this person. But our brain's gathering information about what works and what doesn't, and what leads to positive outcomes and negative outcomes. And the more experience we have, the richer our what we call cognitive reserve, or the inventory that we bring to the table to make decisions. And some people think that, you're smart, you're born with it, and you don't have to maybe work for it. But no, the brain is there as a sponge to gather this information so that we can calculate contingencies. Not that we have our calculator out doing that, but our brain is responding to the most probable successful outcomes. And there's a lot going on without us knowing it. So we can thank our brains for that.
Yes.
But it enhances and reinforces the notion that we really need to have rich, experience-filled lives to make the most informed decisions.
So how do we get better at that?
Yeah, so it's really hard. We just live a life. We live a life that is full of challenges, novelty, sensory experiences. So every new encounter or experience we have, again, it's kind of leaving a footprint, so to speak, on our brain. And one of the motivations to write such a book is we live in a time, humans have used our big old brains to create worlds that are kind of cushy. We're sitting on our rear ends right now, working, but not moving our bodies so much. We press buttons to get our food, clothes, Amazon Prime. We don't build our houses. So we live a very sedentary life. And in fact, the more we can use our money to pay people to do things for us, we look at that as privilege. But I don't think that's privilege for our brain. I think it's downsizing our brain. And so that we have to be careful that even though we think we're prosperous when we can sit quietly and have everyone do things for us, our brain is not very enriched in that experience. So we need to be mindful of that.
We're slightly regressing and devolving, I guess, in a way.
That's my fear.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to, well, I wanted to ask you about this, but, and I'm glad that you brought up what you just brought up, but the whole doom scrolling thing with TikTok and the reels and all that can't be good, right?
I don't think that it is. It's not really something that we are thinking about that's challenging our brain.
It is rewarding though, right?
The only aspect that may be good is that maybe it relaxes someone. So if you're totally stressed, it's not great to have high stress hormones for long periods of time. So maybe that relaxes you, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're just, jealous of what you're seeing or frustrated at something. But we're not it's a very passive experience, just moving a finger.
Right.
So it's not a very sensory or motor or cognitively challenging experience. So it is pretty much a pacifier for our brain. So maybe we need a pacifier sometimes, but not a lot of the time.
But it is, in a sense, sort of like a drug, because it gives you dopamine when you're doing that, right? So that's why we keep going back to it.
Very good. You've got your neurochemistry. So if anyone continues to engage in a behavior, it probably is rewarding,
right.
And it has that positive incentive. And we know that very neurochemical you just mentioned, dopamine, is involved in our more basic motivational responses, such as eating, sexual behavior, social behavior, achievement. But it can be hijacked. It certainly is hijacked from psychoactive drugs that are used and abused, cocaine and other drugs of abuse. And it also can be hijacked through behavior. So we have heard about behavioral addictions, from shopping to gambling. And now this is certainly on the table of using social media, scrolling through. But yes, if we put people in a scanner, we would probably see this area of the brain that utilizes that neurochemical activated. So it can be a real addiction. So we need to be mindful of how that influences our brain.
Is it possible that engaging in doom scrolling is building any positive neuronal pathways, or is it just kind of, just mindless? And
it's probably making us more efficient at moving our fingers and watching screens. And so if that helps you, maybe your traffic control or something,
right.
Maybe it's,
but that's about
with
it,
some sensory motor, with social media, sometimes you may learn something new. You didn't know
right.
about a book or a product, like your wonderful products or something. So you're gathering information, but maybe it needs to be more in moderation.
Got it.
Than excess.
So new challenges are probably more important than doom scrolling. And you mentioned new challenges and experiences can build new neuronal connections. So to me, the way I interpret that is we have all this untapped potential in our brains, but we just need to connect the dots. So doing new things can potentially expand that wiring. Is that basically what that means?
Yes, all the research, you mentioned that I work with rodent models. We call that preclinical models. So this idea of neuroplasticity, where with the rodents, we're looking at, they actually produce new neurons. So new cells are being added. And we certainly do that through, as we're born and building our brain, but after childhood, that declines a little bit, but humans have other ways of expanding the networks and building on those. For example, there's been a few studies, and I've had my students do this too. They take up the hobby of juggling. So you learn to juggle. So in the beginning, you're like, I'm not very good with the sensory motor, but the more you practice, you get better. And because you're better, it's good evidence that some of these pathways have consolidated. But when they have actually looked at people before and after training and juggling, and parts of that cortex, parietal cortex, that deals with spatial body kinds of information, and the occipital that deals with visual, it gets larger, it expands, and you can actually see that. And my other favorite example is the London taxi drivers. I'm not sure how the navigational systems have affected this, but in the past, in order to become a London taxi driver, you had to go through a grueling 4-year training program. You have to memorize every single street in London. So someone gets into your taxi, you know exactly where to go from every point. They've done brain scans on those individuals as well. And the area of the brain that's below our cortex, and it's called the hippocampus, it gets larger, and it's involved in learning and memory. So we have evidence in humans. We certainly have evidence in the preclinical models. And the one thing that is most closely associated with neurogenesis, and that's production of new neurons in the rodents, is running. We can't get them to knit or do the paper crafts or anything, but running. And so exercise is something different. That's a different type of movement. What I've kind of focused on with my work with that may relate to neuroplasticity in humans and building resilience against depression is something I call effort-based rewards. And that's a little bit more controlled, so that we're planning and you see a consequence, you see a product at the end, a meal, a house, a project.
So we could talk about that a little bit. When I was reading your book, in the book you were mentioning that the mice, the contingent mice, they went through mounds looking for Fruit Loops, I think it was, right? Okay.
Yes.
And how were you able to quantify that, based on the fact that they had to work for their food, it made them, well, I guess you check their stress levels, right? Cortisone levels?
Yeah, corticosteroids.
Okay.
Yeah, it's our version of, we have cortisol. So yes, you're asking, how can I look at rats digging in a mound and know anything about stress resilience or anything like that? And there's an approach, if we're talking about interventions for depression in humans, our go-to model is the pharmaceutical approach. There are antidepressants. That's what doctors prescribe, and it works for some people. I made up this word behaviorceuticals to get people to, I'm trying to elevate behavior a little bit, but to appreciate that through our behavior and even thoughts, we can change our neurochemistry. And maybe in similar ways that the pharmaceuticals can, but I think in better ways because we're in control and we don't have to worry about the cost or withdrawal or something like this. So there's a behavioral intervention for humans called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
And it's quite successful. And in many studies where they've compared it to the pharmaceutical approaches, it's held its own and maybe has more long-term benefits and such. So, but there aren't good models. So this isn't what you described, we call effort-based rewards, is an animal model of something like cognitive behavioral therapy. We're not talking to them about their goals, but it's not very physical, just about 5 minutes a day. They go out and they know in this little arena, kind of like a garden, if they dig gently, because we keep putting the fruit, and the Fruit Loop is the currency of our lab. They love Fruit Loops and that's incentive. And so they know that they look for the mounds. Where do I go? And then they dig. And so I want them to make connections between the effort and that reward. And in proper experiments, we have a control group, and the control group here, they get the same number of rewards, but it's non-contingent. They don't have to work for it. So we call those the trust fund rats that some of us can
I like that
maybe identify with when it just kind of falls from the sky. So they have the same experience of the rewards, but the process of getting it is different. And so so they go through that therapy, their effort-based reward therapy, for 4 or 5 weeks. And then we have seen heightened evidence of neuroplasticity. We've seen behavioral evidence of resilience. We'll give them a problem that they can't solve, but they'll keep at it longer if they're the effort-based reward, if they've gone through that training. And you mentioned stress hormones, and it's not so glamorous to say that we measure stress hormones through their poop. It's a non-invasive way. They're very happy to give us their little fecal boli, and we're able to extract the metabolites of their version of cortisol, the stress hormone, and another hormone that is released from the adrenal gland. And then the adrenal gland sits on top of the kidney, and our stress hormones are produced by that gland. And this is called DHEA. And this we think, from the human literature and animal work, that it provides a buffer against the high levels of stress hormones. So if you have higher DHEA to court, that's going to be healthier, and that's more correlated with resilience. And this is something you can actually buy in the health food store, but I'm not advocating that. I like the self-generation and our production, and we're exploring that. But our effort-based reward group, they have that healthier stress hormone profile. Stress hormones are important. I don't want to say we shouldn't have them, and we certainly need them when we need to run away from that, wild animal or the car that's about to hit us on the road. But we just don't. We need for those levels to come back down to baseline so we can respond to the next thing we need to respond to.
So there's a part in your book where you talk about how just building these pathways can just make you deal with things more effectively down the road. So I'm 41 now. I've had 2 nervous breakdowns already, and I think it's not a badge of honor. If anything, it's more just recognizing what led me there. Obviously, my mind, probably just like yours, is always going and going and going. But it seems that when your body has a breakdown like that, it's telling you need to slow down. I can't. I that's just not how I operate, right? But I've noticed that it's not I'm doing fine now. Meaning it's almost like I'm taking on more, but I'm thriving. So it goes to what you're talking about, how over time you build that resiliency where it just doesn't affect you as much.
I think, well, in the news, in the media and the news, we hear a lot about old people these days and how bad that is, and incompetence. But experience through our lives is really a wonderful gift for our brain because of the experiences. And what's so important is that you survived and are thriving past 2 mental health challenges. So you found a way to cope, and coping is something that we haven't talked about, but something that we're studying in the lab to try to figure out, not reflexively cope with the same response, but to figure out that didn't work, what does work. And so we gain those experiences in the kind of psychology world. They use the term cognitive reserve. And I kind of think that the experiences are kind of like books on the bookshelf behind me. And as we age, and I certainly am, and because we have full lives, we start to forget some things. It's not automatic. We don't have dementia automatically. But the more books, cognitive books we have on our shelves, the more protection we have, the more of a buffer we have as our brains start to become a little bit more compromised as we age or through different experiences. So the more we can do to build this cognitive reserve, even if our brain is on a track to have something like Alzheimer's disease, it will probably, research suggests that the people with fuller lives, more engaged lives, they may have 3 to 5 years longer before the symptoms start to emerge. And there was studies done with nuns who had very active lives and lived very long and showed no sign of cognitive decline. And then their brain was riddled with what looked like Alzheimer's. So they had the symptoms, the markers of Alzheimer's. So our experiences are a wonderful type of medicine, behaviorceutical, that can protect us against future challenges and allow us to make informed decisions. I mean, a lot of the pain that we have in our lives is because we made a bad decision. We didn't think about this. And so we need to make informed decisions and not take that too lightly as well. We are in some way very much in control of some of us more than others. But if we can make choices about how we spend our days, and I always tell that to my students, now that you know this about your brain, you are accountable for your brain. So you need to think about, I said, I'm ruining this, your chill out time for the future, but think about, am I exercising this brain? Am I challenging it? Am I rehearsing and learning and training and building the pathways that are important for my, fitness and for my success? Brains are complex, so we need user manuals. We don't just need to accept that they're there and they're going to keep, doing what they're doing. Right. So as we gain this information, it leads to a lot more accountability for brains.
Lastly, what are your top 3 effort-based activities that you think are probably the most rewarding or most beneficial?
For me, or for in general?
No, for you. I want to know about you. What do you do with all this knowledge? I know you're busy, but when you have the time to kind of work on your own pathways.
And I need to shine the light on myself, because I am sometimes I'm so passionate about what I'm doing that I'm working so hard. I've never, and this is different for different people.
Sure.
But I don't love cleaning my house, but I've never had someone clean any part of my house. My husband helps out too, but I know, especially going through this research, that it's important for me to see things that are all cluttered and dusty. And after a couple of hours, it's shiny and it's clean, and maybe have a candle and it smells good. And that just, after having done it, it gives me a sense of control. So more of my effort-based rewards, I mentioned I don't knit, I don't play an instrument. So maybe I'm not the poster child for this.
That's okay.
But it's the day-to-day, cooking a meal that I enjoy with friends, cleaning house. Exercise is incredibly important as well. And I do work out every morning. But my husband and I started doing something, again, as we age, we start to layer on new things, picking up like ballroom dancing. And this is movement, and you have to think about it, and the rhythm, and having a partner. That's really great for your brain. And it's used as a therapy for Parkinson's disease. I think the tango is one that has been used, but it's synchronizing the movement. So there's so many aspects. And then, so effort-based rewards, things that calm me down. I love animals, so pet time and socializing with family, that certainly brings the stress hormones levels down. And challenging, I love travel and just going somewhere new. I think that is really stimulating the neuroplasticity circuits, and looking forward to a trip. That's really rich, that dopamine experience. So I just live a regular life, but I think I appreciate what I'm doing and know that I need to keep doing certain things more so than others.
And maybe even telling yourself that, hey, this experience I'm having right now, this new experience, especially travel, I feel like travel is it really just shakes up your brain a lot, because you're in possibly an uncomfortable environment, brand new, new stimulus. I think it helps just to tell yourself, hey, brain, absorb this. This is a positive experience. Let's build some new pathways.
Yeah, take it all in, so your brain can take it all in.
Absolutely.
And have a new strategy. It can put together some things that may help us. We have an uncertain life, so we need to have brain insurance against the uncertainties, or for the uncertainties. Some uncertainties are fun, but others are challenging.
Kelly, thank you. I really appreciate you spending some time with me, and maybe once I get my feet wet and have a little bit more experience behind the microphone, maybe we'll have you back on and do another one.
You're doing great. And I love that you're supporting and advocating crafts, effort-based rewards. So you're in the behavior-ceutical business.
Perfect. Thank you. Maybe that's a subtitle. Dreaming Tree, the behavior-ceutical company.
Yeah.
In today's conversation, we uncovered some fascinating insights into the intricate relationship between our hands and our brains. It turns out the number of neurons dedicated to controlling motor movements in our hands is astonishingly large. Engaging these neurons through activities that require dexterity like crafting, cooking, or playing an instrument can not only keep our hands nimble, but may also have profound effects on our brain health. By keeping our hands active, we could potentially sharpen our minds and stave off or at least delay the onset of degenerative mental conditions. Moreover, crafting offers more than just neurological benefits. It provides a powerful sense of control in our lives, an aspect that can significantly reduce stress levels. This control, stemming from the simple act of creating with our hands, infuses other areas of our lives with a sense of peace and capability. The therapeutic value of engaging in these activities cannot be overstated, offering a wonderful avenue to maintain the youthfulness of our brains while managing life's stresses. In the words of Martha Stewart, discovering the joy of crafting is indeed a good thing. It's an investment in your mental well-being and a celebration of your innate creativity. Keep exploring, keep creating, and your brain will surely express its gratitude for years to come. Thanks for joining me today, and as always, I look forward to crafting with you again.